So picture this. It's March 25th, 2026.
Right.
And there are thousands of people standing out in a torrential downpour in the middle of London.
Just a massive historic turnout.
Yeah, but here's the crazy part. They aren't protesting a politician. They aren't rallying against a foreign war or, a new tax policy.
No, they're not.
They are literally marching against a string of computer code.
It's wild to think about.
It really is. Welcome to today's deep dive, where our mission is to unpack the exact day the artificial intelligence industry just completely fractured in two.
And we're using a really fascinating source for this today.
Exactly. We're looking at a single explosive news digest from the MIT Technology Review. It's from their AI Hype Index.
Right, and it details this massive ideological showdown happening right now over the militarization of AI.
It's huge. I mean, to me, it feels like the dawn of the nuclear age, or maybe the early days of the internet.
Yeah, that's a good comparison.
Like, it's this definitive moment where a technology finally leaves the sterile environment of the research lab and just hits the battlefield.
And it forces everyone to pick a side.
Right. From the biggest tech conglomerates down to, you, the individual user, paying $20 a month for a subscription.
Well, and it is a definitive rupture. I mean, for years, the discussions around artificial intelligence have been pretty theoretical.
Confined to white papers and stuff.
Exactly. Academic papers, corporate boardrooms where engineers debate these distant long-term implications.
But the events in this MIT digest show that containment is basically breached.
Entirely breached. The militarization of these specific conversational models is no longer just a hypothetical scenario.
It's an active strategy.
Yeah, and the friction it's generating is actively altering the entire strategic landscape of Silicon Valley.
So let's get into the inciting incident. Because to understand the outrage, we have to look at this fundamental split between two of the absolute heaviest hitters in the AI space.
Anthropic and OpenAI.
Right. And the wedge driving them apart is a series of highly lucrative military contracts.
Which is a tale as old as time in tech, really.
True. But according to the digest, Anthropic, which is the company behind the Claude models, was approached by the Pentagon.
They wanted an initiative to adapt Claude for military application.
And Anthropic just drew a hard line in the sand. They walked away.
They did. They cited internal policies against weaponizing their architecture.
Which, that creates a massive vacuum, right?
Oh, a huge vacuum in the defense market. I mean, the Pentagon has an absolutely insatiable appetite for data processing.
Right. And when Anthropic refused, that vast pool of defense capital was just sitting there on the table.
And the digest notes that OpenAI stepped directly into that void.
They struck a partnership to supply the Pentagon with their proprietary models.
Yeah. But the MIT report uses a very specific, very critical phrase to describe OpenAI's maneuver here.
I remember this. They call it opportunistic and sloppy.
Opportunistic and sloppy.
Okay, I have to push back on this a little bit.
Go for it.
Because why is the source material calling this a reckless departure?
We have to look at...
let's look at the history of tech. Defense contracting literally built Silicon Valley.
That's true, it did.
The microchip was heavily subsidized by aerospace and missile guidance. The internet itself started as DARPA.
Right, a decentralized communication network.
To survive a nuclear strike. So isn't OpenAI just running a 60-year-old tech playbook here?
I see what you're saying.
Like, they see a massive government contract and they take it. Why is this specific deal being framed as dangerous?
Well, you are right to point out that historical lineage. But comparing a modern large language model to the early ARPANET kind of conflates deterministic infrastructure with probabilistic intelligence.
Okay, unpack that a bit. Probabilistic intelligence.
Yeah, so the internet was designed to route data packets from point A to point B.
Right.
It doesn't guess where to send them based on statistical weights, and it doesn't hallucinate non-existent routing protocols.
Ah, hallucinations. Okay, I see where you're going.
Right. LLMs, by their very architecture, are statistical prediction engines.
They guess the next word.
Exactly. So they are deeply prone to hallucinations, biases, and unpredictable edge case behaviors.
So taking a consumer-grade probabilistic model and rushing it into the military is...
It's entirely different from selling the military a new microchip.
Right, because the guardrails are completely different. It's like handing over the keys of a prototype sports car to a demolition derby.
Yes.
Before you've even installed the seatbelts.
That is exactly the core of the sloppy characterization in the report.
Wow.
In the rush to secure the partnership and, capitalize on the vacuum left by Anthropic,
they bypass the safety checks.
there is a profound concern that rigorous alignment protocols, the careful deployment strategies required for high-stakes environments, were just bypassed.
Because we have to consider how the military actually intends to use this. They aren't putting a chatbot inside a robot with a rifle.
No, not at all. They're using these models for rapid intelligence synthesis.
Like parsing thousands of hours of drone footage.
Yes. Or translating intercepted communications in real time, finding patterns in global supply chains.
Or automated cyber vulnerability detection, like finding flaws in an adversary's power grid.
Precisely that. And if an AI model hallucinates a fact while you are writing an email, it's an embarrassment.
You send a weird email to your boss.
Right. But if an AI model hallucinates a pattern in satellite imagery that leads to a target acquisition...
That's a geopolitical disaster.
Exactly. The industry had this shared, vague consensus that these models needed years of alignment research before being trusted with autonomous decisions.
And OpenAI accelerating that timeline fractures the consensus.
It effectively bifurcates the industry into two camps, those building for the public and those willing to build for the battlefield.
But this boardroom rivalry doesn't stay in the boardroom, because when you take a model trained on the public's intimate personal data
and hand it to the Pentagon,
you trigger a massive user revolt. And the reaction wasn't just angry blogs.
No, the digest details an unprecedented digital exodus.
Right, users abandoning ChatGPT in massive numbers as a direct result of this military alliance.
And the scale of that abandonment is the variable the tech industry really did not model for.
Which is fascinating because historically, tech boycotts fizzle out so fast.
Incredibly short-lived. A social media giant gets caught selling user data, there's outrage for a news cycle.
A hashtag trends.
Right. And within a week, user metrics return to baseline, because the friction of leaving the platform outweighs the moral objection.
We are addicted to convenience. We generally are.
Which makes this specific exodus from ChatGPT entirely anomalous. People actively chose to disconnect.
They canceled subscriptions.
They moved their workflows. It highlights the psychological difference between a social media feed and a generative AI tool.
It feels different.
It feels uniquely intimate. It's not like finding out your cable provider has shady business practices.
Yeah.
It's like finding out your friendly neighborhood librarian.
It's one you trust.
Yeah, the one helping you draft difficult emails or debug your messy code is moonlighting as an arms dealer, right? Using your conversations to optimize weapons systems.
It's a profound betrayal.
It is, but it goes even deeper than just psychological betrayal. We have to look at the mechanics of how these models maintain value.
Okay, let's get into the mechanics.
This brings us to a concept called RLHF, reinforcement learning from human feedback.
Right.
These AI systems aren't static software. They are living, evolving ecosystems.
They need us.
They require a constant, massive influx of diverse human interaction to stay relevant, to refine their tone, understand emerging culture.
And correct their own logical errors. So every time I ask it to rewrite a paragraph, I'm doing free labor that trains the system.
Exactly. The user base is not just the consumer. The user base is the product engine.
Oh, wow.
So when a massive demographic walks away in a moral boycott over weaponization, it isn't just a hit to revenue.
It actively degrades the product.
Yes. We are looking at the threat of model collapse by moral boycott.
A brand new vulnerability for the industry.
Because if the users flee, the model is starved of the nuanced human data it needs. It essentially becomes a technical lobotomy.
The boycott threatens the foundational supply chain of the tech itself.
Precisely.
That is a fascinating mechanism, data starvation. It completely shifts the power dynamic.
It puts real power in the user's hands.
Right, because moral outrage actually has a tangible mechanical impact now. But the digital starvation wasn't the end of it.
No, it wasn't.
The dissatisfaction couldn't be contained to canceled subscriptions. It bled out into the physical world.
The protest.
The Digest documents this massive public outcry in the streets of London, the largest protest against artificial intelligence in human history.
And that transition from digital grievance to physical mobilization is the ultimate indicator of how severely this issue resonated.
It takes so much energy to get people out of their homes.
Immense activation energy. To get thousands of people into the streets holding signs. We're used to seeing this for civil rights or anti-war movements.
Right.
But seeing it directed at an algorithmic architecture is a complete paradigm shift in civil disobedience.
It has this surreal, almost dystopian edge to it, thousands of people marching against a math equation.
It does feel sci-fi.
But I suppose we've seen anti-nuclear protests before. When the splitting of the atom was applied to weaponry, people marched.
True. But The difference here is the ubiquity of the tech. You don't have a personal relationship with a nuclear silo.
Yeah, I definitely don't have an app for a nuclear silo on my home screen.
Exactly. But millions have ChatGPT sitting right next to their text messages.
That ubiquity is the accelerant.
It is. But to understand why people are physically marching, we have to look at how militarization removes the buffer of abstraction.
What do you mean by that?
Well, prior to this MIT Digest, AI anxieties were largely economic or informational.
Job displacement.
Right. White-collar job loss, copyright degradation, or deepfakes swinging an election.
Which are massive issues, but they are intangible. They are like these slow-moving train wrecks.
They don't trigger an immediate, visceral fight-or-flight response.
Yeah, they don't.
But the concept of AI entering the battlefield crystallizes all those abstract anxieties into a tangible, immediate, existential threat.
It shifts from, will this software automate my accounting firm, to, will this software be integrated into a kill chain?
Yes. When you introduce military application, you introduce the concept of lethal autonomy.
Even if the Pentagon claims it's only for logistics.
The public perception immediately jumps to the loss of human oversight in life-or-death scenarios. That is an existential fear.
And historically, existential fears drive mass physical mobilization. You don't protest a spreadsheet.
No.
You protest an autonomous agent that could direct a drone swarm. So we have this compounding sequence. Anthropic refuses the Pentagon. OpenAI makes a sloppy pivot.
Users revolt.
They realize their assistant is tied to the military. They trigger an unprecedented boycott, which threatens to starve the model.
And then the digital frustration boils over into the streets of London.
Demanding accountability. This forces the entire industry to a screeching halt. We are at a massive strategic crossroads.
The MIT report makes it very clear. The AI industry can no longer operate under the illusion of neutrality.
They have to choose.
The decisions made in this brief window will unequivocally define the trajectory for the next decade.
So if you're a listener right now looking at your own $20 AI subscription, you have to wonder what this means.
It's a fair question.
Does your individual choice to hit cancel actually put a dent in a company that is now backed by a virtually bottomless Pentagon budget?
I mean, the defense sector has hundreds of billions of dollars.
Exactly. Can a grassroots movement actually steer the ship?
It absolutely can. Yeah. And the reason lies in the twin pillars of AI development: data and talent.
Okay, we talked about data, the RLHF loop.
Right. A bottomless defense budget cannot magically conjure the diverse organic human interactions required to train a conversational model.
You can't just buy nuance.
Exactly. If the consumer base leaves, the model loses its edge in reasoning. But the second pillar is human talent.
The engineers actually writing the architecture.
Yes. The leading researchers, the alignment teams, this is an incredibly small, highly specialized talent pool.
And a lot of them are very idealistic.
Very. Many entered the field with the explicit goal of building safe, beneficial AGI for humanity.
Not to build targeting systems.
Right. So if a tech company becomes inextricably associated with weaponization, they risk a massive internal brain drain.
The defense budget doesn't matter if the top tier of global engineering talent just resigns in protest.
You cannot build the system without the architects.
So we are looking at a potential balkanization of the AI industry.
Splitting it in two.
On one side, OpenAI, heavily capitalized by defense contracts, leaning into cyber warfare and intelligence synthesis.
But struggling to retain civilian data and idealistic researchers.
And on the other side, companies like Anthropic, who walked away from the Pentagon but perfectly positioned themselves for the enterprise market.
The ethically compliant option.
Right. Massive European banks, healthcare providers, they don't want their proprietary data on servers managing military logistics.
No, they have strict ESG mandates. They legally cannot partner with defense contractors.
So Anthropic's refusal is basically a massive billboard saying, we are the safe, neutral option.
It's brilliant market positioning, whether driven by ethics or business strategy. By splitting the industry, they are carving up the future of the global economy.
It completely reframes how we think about our relationship to these tools. It's not about which chatbot writes better Python code anymore.
It's about which geopolitical ecosystem you are feeding your data into.
Wow. Let's take a moment to look at the massive journey we've tracked today. We started with an inciting incident mirroring the nuclear age.
The Anthropic and OpenAI schism.
Right. Bypassing critical alignment protocols. We explored the unprecedented user boycott, revealing how RLHF turns moral objection into a technical lobotomy.
And we track that fallout into the physical streets of London.
Abstract fears turning into visceral fears of lethal autonomy.
It's a profound sequence of events. It shows the inescapable feedback loop between software, corporate strategy, and human psychology.
It really does.
But before we wrap up our analysis of this MIT Digest, I want to leave you with a final thought experiment.
Oh, I love these. Let's hear it.
It builds entirely on the mechanical reality of how these models function. We know AI systems scrape the internet.
They ingest all our articles, forums, social media posts.
They use this ocean of text to learn how humans reason and behave. They are a mirror reflecting humanity.
They eat our data to learn how to think.
So consider the implications of the events we just discussed. As this massive wave of public backlash occurs,
Millions canceling subscriptions.
journalists writing scathing critiques, thousands of citizens marching in London with signs demanding the cessation of military AI,
That generates new data.
an unfathomable amount of new data. Petabytes of text, videos, sentiment analysis, all deeply hostile to the existence of militarized AI. The profound question is this: how does a constantly learning AI system interpret the data of millions of humans actively protesting its own existence?
That is heavy.
When the system is designed to align with human feedback, and the feedback is screaming, "Do not build this," how does the architecture resolve that contradiction?
How does a weaponized model digest the resistance of its own creators?
Exactly.
That is an incredibly brilliant thought to end on. An AI trying to parse the training data of a humanity actively trying to turn it off.
It puts the learning in machine learning into a terrifying perspective.
It really does. Well, that brings us to the end of our mission today. We unpacked the day the AI industry fractured and explored the massive mechanisms working behind your digital assistants.
It's been a great discussion.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. As we've seen today, the fallout from this kind of technological rupture does not settle quietly.
No, it doesn't.
The decisions being made right now are actively writing the code for the next century. So keep questioning the tools you use, stay intensely curious, and stay informed. We'll catch you on the next deep dive.